Alexander, pronouns are they, them in California. Something about patriotism and religion. Alexander, you're on with Matt and Eve.
Hey, I love you guys' show, by the way. I was sitting in church literally today. I'm a Mormon, and two of the three hymns, I do the quotes in air as if you can see me, were literally patriotic songs. And I'm sitting in church, listening to the rest of the congregation, most of whom I consider my friends, just sing these patriotic songs completely uncritically without thinking about what's going on right now. Because I'm kind of a news junkie, not kind of. I'm a news junkie, and I'm like looking at what's going on in different countries, our involvement in them, and passive acceptance of it. And we're just sitting in church singing these songs, and I'm going, why? Why is this even in our hymn books? And I'm trying to figure this out, and I don't know. To be perfectly frank with you, I've never been particularly married to doctrine. That's not really my big thing there. It's more about community for me and a safe place for my kids. But my boys are off for the summer with their grandparents. I was there literally by myself, no other family members, just me and the congregation. And I'm just trying to figure out, why am I here? Why? Maybe you can help me. Was I misguided when I decided to do all this and jump into this religion where I'm like, I don't know.
Are you asking two former believers and current atheists if we think you were misguided when you became convinced of your religion? I don't even have to ask, Eve. The answer is yes. We think you were misguided.
Yeah.
But we also acknowledge that we could be wrong. And if you, in fact, weren't misguided and had evidence for your beliefs, we'd love to hear that. But outside of that, yeah, I think I was misguided. I think you were too.
It sounds like you're calling an atheist show to convince you to keep believing this stuff. And to me, that's your answer right there.
Yeah, kind of. I don't know, because the people themselves are wonderful people. I love actually being at church and talking to people. And it's just when we get into these little things where I'm just like, it makes me question, wait, why am I here? Like I said, the doctrine's not a big deal with me. It's not. I don't.
Do you have any hobbies?
Yeah.
Do you have any hobbies that you like doing?
Yeah.
Why don't you go to events and hang out with people? Yeah. Why don't you go to those things and hang out with people that participate in those hobbies where you don't have to hang out with people that believe things that you yourself seemingly are no longer believing anymore? You can find community in so many places. I found way better community when I left. So if your only reason for participating in an entire religion is for community, congratulations. You don't have to participate anymore because that's a terrible reason to continue.
Now let me try to convince myself of that.
You can try to convince us if you want. We can go that way. Why do you believe in a God?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I've had
and which God do you believe in?
Oh, I don't even know how to begin to answer that. The way I've always envisioned God is, to make it as simplistic as humanly possible, is like an amoeba in space. I've always imagined God as this collection of cosmic power that's just sort of connected to everything. Most people don't even realize it's there, but somewhere out in the universe is just something that's just so powerful that it's just somehow connected to everything.
Most people don't realize it's there. Most people don't realize it's there. For the people who do realize it's there, what evidence do they have?
I imagine just personal experiences. That's all I really have. It's just what I felt in situations.
How could anybody, including the person who had the experience, know that their interpretation of the experience is an accurate representation of truth? Like you say, there's something out there. Most people aren't aware of it. Maybe there's not something out there, and the people who are aware of that something are wrong, right?
That is a possibility, absolutely.
So how do we tell the difference between those two possibilities of whether or not there is, in fact, something out there?
I'm not sure.
Then why would you believe if you don't have any way of knowing you're correct?
I find it hard, if not impossible, to deny the experiences I've had. One specific one. I've been grappling it with my entire life.
Have we talked about it before?
Not that I'm aware of.
Cool. So what's your experience that you have such difficulty having had this experience in saying that it's possible or likely that there's not a God after that experience? What is it?
In junior high, I literally almost unalived someone. It was somebody who had been bullying me for the past 3 years of my junior high experience. It was my last year of junior high, and I was ready to just walk up to them. I saw them just standing there alone, and I was literally walking up to them with an object in my hand, ready to shove it through their throat, when all of a sudden, over the loudspeaker, I hear my name called. Please come to the office. So I put the object back in my backpack, went there. And it was my outside therapist who had never once visited me at school before or after this event. She just happened to be there that one specific day at that one specific moment. And when I saw her standing there, I felt something that I could not describe. I have never been able to describe, and I've never been able to figure out what was.
So for you, the fact that your therapist showed up and they called your name over the loudspeaker just before you were getting ready to do physical harm to someone, that is somehow strong evidence that it's strong evidence that God exists?
I don't know about strong evidence that a God exists, but I can't deny that I had a feeling at that time.
Alexander,
you don't have to deny that.
You absolutely were bullied. You absolutely were pissed at somebody. You absolutely were going to do them harm. And your name absolutely came over the loudspeaker and your therapist was absolutely there. What does any of that have to do with a God?
It felt like something purposefully had stopped me. That's what I felt at that time. And I don't know why I would have felt that, especially if nothing exists. How or why would that have happened?
You feel that because we're all pattern seekers, because part of you knew the consequences of doing harm to somebody. Part of you desperately wanted to be stopped, while part of you wanted justice. And those two parts were toiling. And when you were interrupted, it felt like somebody answered you as to which path was the correct path. But that doesn't mean that that's what was happening. Coincidences happen. And by the way, if it was what happened, then the reality you're describing right now, Anthony, is a reality in which a God allowed you to be bullied, allowed that bullying to become so toxic that you were willing to do violence onto somebody else, and that God allowed you to be right on the edge of committing it and then decided to intervene in a way that is not particularly clear as to whether or not there's a God. What kind of God let you suffer through all that time up to the point of wanting to do harm to somebody and then decided to step in to stop you? What kind of asshole God does that?
And it would also mean that that same God allowed other people to go, as we've heard, those acts have been committed in schools. And that means that God decided to stop you that day. He sent your counselor. Why didn't he send that counselor to Columbine?
You know, I've told my story to a dozen people maybe throughout my lifetime. And nobody, not one person, has ever framed it in that way. I've never thought about it in that way before.
Yeah, these are important things to think through. Thank you for listening also, by the way.
You know why nobody framed it that way?
I try to pride myself as somebody. I'm sorry. I try to pride myself as somebody with an open mind.
So nobody framed it that way because I'm going to bet that a good chunk of the people you were talking to were biased to the other direction. And in addition, the reason why it's more difficult for you to think in those same terms is because you are traumatized and you were bullied and you didn't see any way out but to do harm to someone, and you desperately did not want to. And so once that scenario is there, of course it feels like somebody's looking out for you, until you start to take that model and say, hang on, if this being was looking out for me the whole time, why weren't they looking out for the students at Columbine? Why weren't they doing why didn't they intervene in these other situations? Or why did they wait so long? What was so important that I had to cry and be mired in misery and anxious about even stepping foot in that school? What kind of God allows all of that to happen to build you up to the point where you are desperate and alone before they step in to do something that might vaguely be interpreted as them stopping you? This is what religions do. And I'm going to go back to something you said just a little bit earlier, because you talked about going to church and you were like, they're all so nice. I get it. Mormons are incredibly nice. They're forced to be. When I was in the scout groups met at the Mormon people's house, and it's because they were extra nice, and we were warned ahead of time that Mormonism was a cult and that we should not be listening to anything they say if they say anything that's religious or whatever. But everybody agrees they're nice people. Mitt Romney, nice as fucking all get out. There's a bunch of Mormon folks that I just adore. Southern Baptists, they're nice too, as long as you're one of them. How nice, when you want to find out how nice somebody is, take a look at what they think, do, and say about people who aren't part of their in-group. Take a look at, for example, the people in my church and some members of my family think that homeless people are just lazy. And they'll cite verses about he who does not work will not eat. And they will talk about what other people do with their sex lives and about the LGBTQ community as if they're abominable. These people are nice in church, in their fancy Sunday clothes, to the people who they think they're in the in-group with. Are they nice to the homeless queer down the street? I don't see it. Even if they thought they were being generally kind, most of them are actively voting for people who will encourage a scenario under which those people don't have equality and don't have rights. When you look at what the Heritage Foundation is trying to do with Project 2025,
yeah,
I'm not just mad because they want to outlaw porn. You're never going to fucking outlaw porn. It's the stupidest thing in their whole platform. That's the one thing that's not going to go. They'll get rid of abortion and they'll make it illegal and hard for anybody to be gay in a relationship, but not when it comes to fucking on film. You're never going to stop it. And you know what? They don't want it to stop. If I walk into the sex shop down there to buy my Delta, whatever, it's said before that I'm going to get the quote all wrong, but basically Baptists don't recognize each other in the liquor store, and the same is true in the porn shop, because you take a look at Pornhub or somebody else, it's not all atheists that are logging in there to watch porn. It's just not.
Yeah, no,
and
way.
So whether or not they're nice to you while you're part of their in-group is irrelevant to whether or not the tenets are true. And it's completely unsurprising. Why would churches even continue to exist if they weren't at least nice to the other people who showed up for their churches? And you know who else they're really nice to? Guests. They're sickening, saccharine nice to guests. If you want to have somebody be the nicest to you that's likely to ever happen, pick a random church in your neighborhood and show up on Sunday as a guest. And when they come up and say, you can say, hey, I'm just kind of new to all this and exploring. And they will love bomb you and take you out to dinner and offer to take care of your kids and talk about how much you're needed in this community. And, do you know, it is the nicest thing ever. I can't be that fake, which is why they don't let me in churches like that anymore.
Alexander, I also have another thing to just add on real quick. You mentioned that one of the reasons you keep going is for a safe place for your kids. And I urge you to go listen to the stories of people that grew up as children in the Mormon church and hear how a lot of the doctrine and theology that you yourself said you're not there for impacted their life, because those stories are some of the worst I've heard of people with religious trauma. It is devastating to hear what they went through, the abuse that they endured, and if you care about your kids, I think that is worth looking into alone. Forget everything else. Forget the patriotism and hymns, whatever. Go look at the impact this has on children that are raised in the Mormon church.
I've heard some of those stories, but a lot of those stories involve like super devout parents, which is very much not the iron fist I rule with. That's not how I do things as a parent, and I can't. I can't. Especially considering me and my husband are both you, And so
I'm sure that you're great parents. I just think it's worth looking at and thinking through that perspective, because why have your kids hang around a lion's den, even if you're going to be quick to grab them if something goes wrong? Why even hang out there when you could go to a petting zoo with some cute sheep instead? That's all I would say. Because even if something doesn't happen to your kids, they're growing up with these adults around them that are potentially abusing other people, and for sure abusing them with the theology and doctrine. And you don't know what your kids are going to take from you more or take from the other adults that you're bringing them intentionally around. And that alone is worth looking into.
I very much appreciate your counsel and your time. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much for listening to us. And I appreciate you being so honest and answering our questions and sharing your story and all of that. And I'm so sorry for what you went through with the bullying. That's awful.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alexander. Also, the patriotism and the getting this worked into church. I remember watching the documentary Jesus Camp and sitting there going, wow, this is exactly like the church camps that I went to as a teenager, except we didn't have a big poster of the president that we put our hands on and prayed about. That wasn't part of it.
I had that.
We did. See, we did not.
That.
And I find it offensive that there's a contingent of the population that are somehow equating patriotism and religiosity. But I get it, because that's the avenue under which they have basically stunned, stupefied, and manipulated about half of the population of the United States. What it is elsewhere in the world, I'm not completely sure. But it may have been going for longer. It may be something that's happened from the dawn of time. But from my view, sort of a mid 1970s shift in tying patriotism and certain views to religions, and also extracting certain religious views from what is seen as truly patriotic. For me, dissent is patriotic. We were founded on dissent, and we're going to continue to break things and fix things. And dissent is the most patriotic thing. I have a whole box of United States flags downstairs in a cabinet. They exist for one purpose. And that is the next time some elected representative tries to push a flag burning amendment or anything like that would make it illegal to burn the flag, I will be burning those flags, recording it and filming it, and talking about how I'm an 8-year veteran of the military, and the long tradition of the United States not only should, but must allow me or anyone else to burn a fucking cloth. And the absolute ridiculous fear mongering that goes, why, how dare you disrespect the flag? Fuck you and your flag. I did 8 years in the military. I'm a patriot. But I'm not beholden to a flag. And as long as you guys are going to wipe your ass with the Constitution, I'll burn a flag. That's what's happening. The Supreme Court of the United States is wiping their ass with the Constitution. The Republican Party, the Heritage Foundation, all of these organizations are wiping their ass with the Constitution. I took an oath to defend the Constitution, not the flag, against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And the Supreme Court are now domestic enemies of the Constitution. But there's nothing that I can do about that other than continue to vote. I'm not in a position to take any action. I'm not sure anybody else is. I don't know how to necessarily defend this. And I'm not in any way advocating for violence. But when they listen to the Heritage Foundation saying, oh, this is the next American Revolution and it will be bloodless as long as the left allows it, I can guarantee you're going to fucking have to kill me. If you look at me and say, I'm going to come take over your country, I'm going to shit all over the Constitution that you defended, and this will be painless and bloodless as long as you allow it, I'm not allowing it.
Hey, it's Jimmy Snow here. I'm the executive producer on the line with a fun fact. Did you know 100% of the hosts of this channel enjoy eating? It's true. And if you would like to help contribute to their ongoing addiction, you can do so by going over to Patreon or becoming a channel member. There are show-specific, host-specific tiers. Those are awesome. But also, you can leave a super thanks with a special little highlighted comment. You can like, comment, and subscribe. All of those will help fill our whittle bellies. By the way, check out some of this content over here. Algorithm, what next?